This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, episode 24.
The main thing to me on a machine, if it's going to be built at home in a garage or even in a professional environment, is the adjustability of the machine and the simplicity of putting it together.
This is the CNC Router Tips Podcast, a show which answers one question from you, the listener, about CNC router tables, CNC software, hardware, web hosting, and business. I'll help you get started in your CNC hobby or business and help you cut through the confusion.
Today's episode is sponsored by TheMakersGuide.com. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Griggs. I'm really excited today because I'm going to get a chance to speak to someone who was instrumental in my growth in the CNC hobby. This gentleman sets a real example of giving things away and how that can help you gain more than you can imagine. So sit back and relax while we speak with Joe Cantill of Joe's CNC. Hello, everyone. I'm here with a special guest for the CNC Router Tips Podcast episode. I'm speaking with Joe Cantrill, and Joe has been doing wonderful things in the CNC community for most of this century. It's kind of been that way. I first heard about Joe around 2006, 2007 through a website called the CNCZone.com. Joe was doing something really amazing, and that was he was building his own CNC router tables, and he gave the plans away. And that was just an amazing feat. So I'd like you to welcome Joe Cantrill. How are you doing today, Joe?
Good. How you doing, Bill?
I'm doing well. Now, where are you from, Joe?
Marion, Texas.
What part of Texas is that?
I guess that would be a little northeast of San Antonio.
Okay. Excellent. So take us back a little bit. Where were you before you got into CNC? What were you doing?
Well, kind of just miscellaneous hobbies and stuff like that. And then I, like everybody else, surfing the internet, start watching some YouTube videos here and there. And then it kind of piqued my interest on CNC machines. Mm-hmm. I've always been the type that, I pretty much repair or build anything myself. I don't go out and buy things, Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a hobby or I guess just what I do.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I was before I found your information, I was in the process of building my own CNC machine and actually stopped what I was doing when I saw what you were doing. So you started with I think it was called the Joe's CNC 2006 machine. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, that wasn't my first machine.
What was
your first? My first machine I had saw was a lot of people may be familiar with it or heard of it or seen it before on CNC Zone, was called the Jargo, Jargo, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it was a MDF machine with skate bearings on pipe rails. So I looked at that and I started to build it, but then I wanted to change a few things on it. So I did. And then I, completed the machines with, actually I went to a copier repair place and they yanked some little steppers out of their copy machines that I used, little bitty mm-hmm. motors. So I did that. And then I think I used a hobby CNC board at that time. Mm-hmm. They were unipolar battery, stepper motors.
Yeah.
And then I gained three PC power supplies together to get me 36 volts out of it, you know. So that was the first machine, and then I could see the limitations of that quite a bit. So I wanted to get something that was a little more beefier and, you know, could do a lot more things with it. So I sat down and started drawing up what's known as a Joe's CNC Model 2006. And started that in 2005, I believe, and finished at the beginning of 2006. Drew the basic parts. The way I operate, I draw everything 2D in AutoCAD. And, you know, I work, my full-time job is a civil engineering company. It's where I work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have AutoCAD and SolidWorks and, you know, you name it, we've got it. Mainly for importing other companies' drawings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I draw all my 2D things in AutoCAD because that's what I'm accustomed to. And then I had to kind of teach myself SolidWorks to be able to visualize the machine also, because that's how I am. It's hard for me to see something in 3D that's in 2D. So I got to be able to spin it around and look at it and, you know, look at different angles.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage of that is I can line up the holes and make sure, you know, everything lines up, putting it together. So I drew that up, and then there was a couple people interested in it, so I started go ahead and give them the drawings and things like that, a little boom on it, and which is the building materials and, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, the 2006 was kind of unique because it was the first machine that I ever saw that used a torsion box for the spoil board and for the base of the machine.
Mm-hmm. And a torsion box for the gantry.
Yeah, it was a very rugged machine.
And the other thing that I changed on the typical machine, I guess you could say in those days,
mm-hmm.
DIY machines that were using skate bearings, they were only using one rail. So I decided to put 2 pipe rails on each side and lock the system down. And it seemed to work fairly well.
Yeah, it gave it a lot more rigidity. I recall at that time I built a machine from John Kleinbauer plans, crankorgan.com, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cranky was his nickname.
Yeah.
And it only used a single.
That one.
Yeah, it only used a single pipe rail, and it was great until the spindle met resistance, and then it would push the gantry up off of the rail for just a brief second. So
yeah, and you would get a little racking on it also.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the double rail seemed to it didn't do away with it, but it seemed to alleviate a bunch of the racking and lifting and everything. You know, the best it could being MDF.
Yeah. Now, when folks got your plans for the 2006 for the Joe CNC 2006, they actually had to then go and convert those drawings into cut file or some, you know, manual. You know, a lot of people manually cut out the parts using, you know, just regular router, and there was a lot of
right.
Yeah,
I think I had some DWG files and DXF files at that time because, you know, a lot of people didn't use AutoCAD and a lot of the drafting programs didn't import AutoCAD files. So I did some DXF files. Mm-hmm. And they, like you were saying, people would hand cut them. They would just print them out and then basically just glue them to the wood and cut them out.
Yeah.
And then for grooves, they would just route them out with the router. So. There's quite a few of them that were hand built like that.
Yeah, I know from following the forum on that it, you know, it grew to the point where folks started asking you if you'd cut the parts for them.
Yeah.
Is
so
that...
I did that, and actually I still do. I probably do maybe one or two a year for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's that's about it on that.
Yeah, that one's pretty intense as far as the number of parts that are in that machine. If you are trying to do that version versus the newer stuff that you have.
That's correct. Yeah,
yeah.
So, a lot of gluing.
Yeah. So I had got a set of your plans. I don't remember. I think it might have been somewhere around 2007 or 8, and I had gone through the process of looking it up and converting your files into. I think I was using Solid Edge at the time, which is another CAD program, and getting ready to try and cut them out. And it was always just one of those really very involved projects because I really didn't have that skill. I built model airplanes, but I had never built them.
Yeah, you get to the point where you're little. You want to do it, but you're a little hesitant to do it.
Yeah, and about that time, you started talking about a new design that you were working on, and I think that's where our paths finally crossed, somewhere around 2008 and 9.
Right. Yeah, I started the design of what I call a hybrid machine in the beginning of 2008, and it was almost a full year before I fully developed it. That it's kind of funny. That machine went through probably 3 different iterations before I finally settled on the final design I had. I actually was using the unistrut for the rails, beginning with like the old shopbots, if you remember those. And I had actually designed a machine and built it very similar to the shopbot. Because that was a, I wouldn't say famous machine, but a well-known machine that people use,
Yeah.
That grew quite a bit.
Yeah, I remember that most of the initial shopbots were built by the owner rather than, a kit from the company.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, yeah, when first time that I saw your hybrid design was, I think 1 or 2 iterations before you released it, and you were using 80/20, but you had some Delrin spacers that were holding your pipe up above the surface of the 80/20.
Yeah. I just made like a T connection with the cutout for the pipe at the top, and it was using still skate bearings at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I still wasn't happy with it. I mean, I built it and I used it for, a little while. It did its job, but, I still wanted something better.
Yeah. Yeah, you had a lot of firsts, as a matter of fact. Yours was the first machine I ever saw with an automatic tool changer as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, there was a gentleman also put one on the 2006 machine. He, was it IM Service? Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was like IMS Service or something like that.
Change.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a spring-loaded tensioning system that they use, but the limitation of that was you couldn't go over 10,000 RPM.
Yeah. And our routers couldn't get down that low.
Yeah.
Speed-wise. So, yeah. Yeah, that brings back memories. But right around that time, you got to working on the hybrid in earnest. And I remember, this is the way forums work. You post a picture, and then for the next 3 months, everybody bugs you. Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Can I order it? Can I order it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep. And I really didn't want to release anything until I was satisfied with it. That's just the way I operate. If I'm not happy with it, I don't think other people will be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go ahead and set a date to get it released, which was the January of 2008, I believe. if I'm just checking my records here.
I think it was 2009, but I could be wrong.
It's how time flies, I tell you.
Yeah, it was.
No, it's 2008. Yeah,
2008. Okay.
January 2008. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it. I think I got maybe the 7th or 8th or something like that set of plans. I don't even recall now, but it was in the first batch.
I'm looking at my records, and just that January, there were so many people waiting that I have 50 people in January bought a set of plans for me for that machine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's quite a few in one month there.
Oh yeah, and it wasn't when you go back into $2008, it wasn't inexpensive. It was $100 for the plans.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So
yeah, and I mean since then it's been ups and downs. Of course, it depends on the season, Christmas and holidays, everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to school, people spend money, so people, they plan of when they can spend their money on their hobbies.
Yeah.
And of course, when their significant other will let them also.
Well, it's funny because I had been following the development of the plans, and when you came out with them, it was $100, and I was
mm-hmm.
doing things off my lunch money. I'd put a few dollars away from my lunch, just eat something different while I was working, because you have kids and everything. And I said, should I pay $100 for this, or should I continue on with the project I've got? And your machine looked so good and had solved so many design issues that I was going with. I said, opened up my wallet and spent $100.
Mm.
And it was the best $100 investment I have ever made.
Yeah, I hear that quite often.
And it's not just the plans.
No.
But it's the community, the forum that you built around it.
Yeah, we have some excellent people in there, and from all walks of life and all different backgrounds, and it's just a cumulative of a lot of people and knowledge. I tell you,
mm-hmm.
I mean it, and the forum is not just CNC. I mean, we've got categories in there, of different hobbies that people do, and they show off their hobbies, and
mm-hmm.
It spurs other people on, doing things.
Yeah, it's one of those things you never really know what's going to come up, from day to day, as people mm-hmm. explore things, and they just want to share what they are. Airsoft, for an example, somebody posted a picture of their airsoft gun.
Oh yeah,
and the next thing you know, it's threads are springing up all over the place with folks showing, their guns and the toys that they're making for them.
That's right. Yeah, and of course real guns also.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, a lot of AR-15 auto loader post coming up now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Magazine loader files for folks who might not be familiar with that. There's a set of plans out that you can make a magazine loader to load, your magazines for your AR-15 rifle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it lays down flat, and you just lay out the shells and put your clip down there, and you just use a guide, and it just goes in a circular pattern and loads the clip up in one swoop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just one thing. I mean, we've talked about archery and fishing and musical instruments, living off grid.
Just about everything, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. A lot of RC guys too.
Oh yeah. And they share their plane designs and get different ideas from other people of what what they could add to it, or what's the best FPV stuff to use, what they should do, where they should get it, different things. You ask it, you can get a question. You can get an answer. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one thing I really like about the Joe CNC forum community. It just a bunch of like-minded people who are willing to share their knowledge and to help others, gain knowledge and, figure out their problems.
yeah, about anything really. I mean, we've had people with, even mention their personal problems, and it kind of hits hard on people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that's you said a key word there. It's not a forum; it's more of a community.
Yeah, I agree. And we even watched one fellow go through massive weight loss. And just talk about it.
He kind of shared his journey with us too.
Yeah, that was pretty inspiring. During the time I actually, got out and started doing some of the things he was doing, and I lost weight too. So it was kind of really nice. I need to get back on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been quite it was quite a good experience to get into the forum. I built my first Joe's CNC hybrid from your original plans and used the lead screws, the Acme lead screws.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then after using that for a year or so, I went over to Rack and Pinion. There were 3 or 4 of us that kind of were behind that. It was, again, a community effort to figure out how to make Rack and Pinion work.
If you remember Chris, he was actually the first one to put the Rack and Pinion on his machine. He actually took his carriages off and cut holes in them to be able to pivot the Rack and Pinion inside of it.
Yeah.
So he was the first one that started doing that. And then, we saw it and it was good. So the simplicity of it.
Yeah.
And, the one drawback of the Acme lead screws, not ball bearing, not ball screws, but most machines that size was using the Acme lead screws and Delrin anti-backlash nuts. And the 2 drawbacks of it, I'll say that. One is speed. Once you get out to the 4 foot, 6 foot span on those Acme screws, if you don't go up to a 1 inch or 1.25 inch screw, you're going to start getting some whipping in there. And that was another modification that a member came up with too, by putting a double bearing on each end of the lead screw to kind of stop that whipping a little bit.
Yeah, that was a great mod. It was one of the first ones I made.
Yeah. And of course, with the Delrin nuts, of course, here in Texas, I really didn't have that problem, but up north, I think that's where you're from. Yeah. Colder temperatures will shrink those Delrin nuts. And they'll just bind on the screws.
Yeah, I went through an entire winter trying to figure out exactly what was causing that. It was very frustrating.
You would lose steps and everything,
Yeah, you'd go out and you'd cut a program, and then it was on the upstroke of the Z-axis that you'd lose steps. And you might not hear it happen, but it was...
Well, you got your router running and everything,
Yeah.
So it's very hard to hear things, and your dust collection.
And then next thing you know, the router bit is buried into the bed of the machine because, the Delrin was cold and, the metal, and it had shrunk and, now it could slip. So
Right. Yeah. So, going with the Rack and Pinion, it solved quite a bit of issues there. It's like, the machine is just taking on a life of its own, really.
Yeah. I think prior to the Rack and Pinion, the fastest anyone was cutting was maybe 120, 125 inches per minute.
Right. Yeah.
And then it went crazy. I think somebody did over 2,000 or something like that, or 1,500. I don't remember now. Inches per minute
with the
with
rack and pinion.
With the rack and pinion, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous fast.
Oh yeah, and it's scary fast. You know, you see a gantry that weighs 90 pounds coming at you at Mach 7. It's just yeah. So it wasn't really practical to cut at that speed, but it sure was nice to have the rapids that fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of steps along the way. Once
after the first few people did the rack and pinion mod, that's when I decided, why don't I just incorporate that into the plans?
Mm-hmm.
So I made what rack and pinion addendum sheets, which I attached to the back of the the original lead screw machine, and the other modification that we started doing was the steel base instead of using the unistrut. The reason we used the unistrut to start with, because it was just easy for people to obtain and bolt together. And then of course you could, put a face around it and with plywood or whatever, and that stiffened it up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still have the unistrut bed on mine, but I would love to go to the steel base. I just hadn't gotten around to it.
Mm-hmm. So that was the I guess the next iteration of the machine, so to speak, was the rack and pinion and steel base. The thing about the steel base also that I like people making them is...
Today's episode is sponsored by The Maker's Guide, creator of the Triple Edge Finder. Get the edge you need, save time and frustration on your CNC project, and make setup a snap. Save time and material. Set up your workpiece on your CNC router table faster than ever. Accurately set your Z-axis height first time, every time. Automatically locate the corner or edge of a workpiece. Reset your starting point in the middle of a program. Quality crafted right here in the USA on US-made CNC machines. Get the edge you need today. Go to www.themakersguide.com/edge. The Maker's Guide. Useful tools for makers.
The thing about the steel base also that I like people making them is there's a lot of people that's never welded in their life. So, heck, they go out and buy a 110 Harbor Freight welder on sale for $89, and a lot of people on the forum taught themselves how to weld. And that's it's a skill set to have.
Definitely, it's used in so many different places, and it's welding isn't really difficult once you get the basics down.
No, not really at all. I mean, to start with, you can you'll have what they call gorilla welds. They're strong, but they're ugly as heck. So, and the more you practice, the better your welds get, just like anything else. But we've had a lot of people that said they never welded before, and they're glad they did it.
Well, I ended up helping a local college build a couple of router tables a few years ago in 2012, and
that was
Morrisville, yep, Morrisville State College, yep, yeah, and we used the welded base on all of those machines, and the difference between that welded base and the unistrut base is night and day. The machine doesn't rock anymore. It's solid. It's so much of a better design that, you're really wasting your time if you're doing the unistrut, in my opinion, now.
Nowadays, yeah. Well, the unistrut, you get a lot of resonance noise going through it from the machine itself. Yeah. So, which you won't get into the steel base like that.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it, figuring it in as you're going to build. If you're going to do it, you might as well figure in the cost of a welder and just do the steel base. It doesn't cost a whole lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got people on the forum, that are, gosh, excellent welders, and some of their welds, they're just, wow. That just puts me to shame,
One of the kids at the college, a young man, who did the majority of the welding on our project, his name is Jed Lamont, and Jed has been welding since he could probably stand, and I don't know if you've ever
learned
heard
it from his.
Yeah, he learned it from his dad in his shop, and I don't know if you ever heard of Ferris lawnmowers. They're the zero-turn type lawnmower, but they have a factory near Morrisville College, and they brought out their guy from their engineering department who is in charge of precision measuring. And so he brought out this robotic arm that measures things. And this kid, Jed, had welded his table along a 6-foot span, and it was off by 2 arc minutes over a 6-foot span.
Mm.
That's so tiny.
Yeah.
Well,
it was all in his technique of what he learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm really impressed with him, and I may try and twist his arm to get him to build my table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so after you developed this the rack and pinion version of the hybrid, things settled down for a couple of years, but you kind of got the itch again and started doing some metal foundry stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got the itch again. That's correct. Mm-hmm. Can't sit still.
Yeah. So you started pouring metal?
Yeah, I actually started doing some research and actually built my own foundry. I actually built it in I out of refractory material. I did little bricks. They're like curved bricks, and I did little notches in them, and they fit together so no air would pass in between the bricks when they were, laid in there. And I just put it into a oil drum as the outside and put some heat resistant insulation in there, and built my own furnace, burner, everything. So, and I was using a hair dryer to force air through it. So that was kind of a running joke about the hair dryer, And I started casting plates for the next machine like that. But before that, in the forum, I was posting the design in there, and how you can actually watch that post and see the machine transform from its first days on through to the final design, as far as plates and side plates for the Y and X axis, how they evolved, and what I was figuring the best way to orientation for them, everything.
Yeah, I was just, believe it or not, looking through that earlier today. I had
really?
Yeah, I had forgotten your original side plates looked like the state of Texas.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I kind of wish they still did. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you went through a lot of iterations. I think over it was at least a month worth of you posting SolidWorks drawings of the different things that you were looking at. Yeah. So, and that's kind of neat because you get to see the design process going on inside your form. What you're thinking and which way you're headed. So yeah.
Yeah, and it also helps. Maybe somebody on the forum sees something that I'm not looking at. It's always get a step back and take a look at things.
Yeah, because just before you had designed the the Evolution, which is the next machine that you were talking about. I had gone off in a slightly different direction with my version of the machine and with the side plates, and it's amazing how many different ways you can solve the same problem and still have a good machine. It's very difficult to build a bad Joe's CNC.
And the main thing to me on a machine, if it's going to be built at home in a garage or even in a professional environment, is the adjustability of the machine and the simplicity of putting it together.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you look at my parts, everything is pretty much bolted together, well, except for the welded base, of course. It's pretty much bolted together and locked in using the unistrut as the base design.
Or the 80-20.
I'm sorry, 80-20, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Even my uprights on the side are made of 80-20, heavy wall 80-20 that goes onto the plates and up to the gantry beam, and it's all locked in, and you can't budge the thing.
Now the Evolution was different from the rack and pinion hybrid in quite a few ways. The heavier X-axis extrusion was one of them, and the adjustable height for the side plates was another.
That was my thought. Why not let it be more of a universal machine? If somebody wanted to keep their gantry down low and didn't need a lot of Z-axis travel, then they can lower the whole gantry beam down. If they needed it higher, then they can raise it up. Just lock it in.
Yeah, and it's definitely a rugged system. We've seen a few of them built out in this area from some of the guys in the forum. It's definitely very solid.
Yeah, as we were discussing before, I had originally started casting those plates. Time-wise, it was a little bit more doing that. Of course, material was a little cheaper because, I was getting aluminum from the scrap yards and melting it down and casting the plates and things like that, But there's a lot of things in casting that goes along with it. You've got to make your mold plates. You got to make sure everything's perfectly flat. You've got your sand mixture, which uses special sand with special additives and special oil that you keep adding to it because the oil burns out. So that's a usable material. You got a muller, which conditions the sand. So there's a lot to it, really. And then I decided, you know what? I wonder, why don't I just cut these out of plate aluminum? Then I don't have to worry about the plates being flat, because they will be flat. And, I just put it on my my original Evolution and push the button and go,
Yeah, you cut the plate aluminum on the Evolution machine?
On the Evolution machine itself. That is correct. 3/4 inch thick plate aluminum.
Yeah, and now if I recall correctly, you don't have a spindle on yours, do you? You have a router, or has that changed?
Yeah, I have a router. It's a Hitachi router with the what's called the Super PID, which is I forgot what country that is made from.
I think that's Australia.
Australia, okay. Yeah. And
or New Zealand. I apologize if I got it wrong.
Got the control in Mach. I've just got it with a pot, setting it manually, but it'll slow the router down to 5,000 RPM. So the original Hitachi is, I believe, 8,000 to 23,000, something like that.
Yeah.
and it'll slow it down to 5,000 to start cutting things like that.
And you still have torque?
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's one thing it doesn't take away, because, I mean, you could do the same thing if you wanted to with a dimmer switch. You know, some people have done that, but you lose your torque.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but this Super PID is a really nice little setup. There's several people on the forum that uses it now.
Yeah, I did not get one of those because I noticed that you had to modify the router. How difficult was that to do?
I had it done within 30 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's real easy, because on his website he has different pictures of how to do it, and now there's more and more YouTube videos showing the porta cables, the Hitachi. I think there was a DeWalt that was done. You know, different routers used. It's basically just your on the inside of the spindle. There's a nut on the top of the Hitachi, and you just put some little white paint on there. Half white paint, and the tack reads the white, black, white, black, white, black, and it gets your speed right there.
Okay. I would have thought it was more involved than that, but that sounds pretty easy. When you look at the Super PID versus a spindle, cost wise, Super PID is about $150, $175, something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the router, like my Hitachi, I got it on sale. It was like $95.
Mm-hmm.
So for less than $300, you've got a router that works really well. I've been real happy with the Hitachi routers, and you got controllability. And the other thing about the Super PID, it's 100% Mach compatible on controlling it. You can set your speed in Mach, turn the router on and off just like a spindle.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you don't have a reverse. So that's a little difference. I don't know if a regular spindle has a reverse or not.
I'm not certain either. I've not heard of anyone say that it does, but you never know.
Yeah. I just haven't, because of the cost. I haven't broken down and got a spindle.
Yeah, I
haven't needed one.
Yeah, I toy with the idea every month or so, and it always comes down to the fact that I can run down to Sears and buy my router for $80 and be back in business. But if I have to get a spindle from even the ones that are in California, that's a few days away.
Mm-hmm. You throw a bearing in a spindle, it's a lot of work to get it fixed.
Yeah.
And you throw a bearing in a router, they're fairly easy to replace.
Mm-hmm. So,
and they're so cheap, you can keep spare parts on hand.
Mm-hmm.
I got extra bearings and bushings.
Yep, I keep a set of brushes in the box, because I've probably gone through 3 or 4 sets of brushes over the years.
Yeah.
Just change them out and off you go.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's describe the Evo in a little more detail as far as the size and what's on an Evo.
Well, the difference in between the Evo and the hybrid machine. Well,
I often mention many different types of software during the episodes, and hardware and cutters, and it can get a little confusing. So what I did was I put together a page on my website, CNCRoutertips.com/resources. And on that page, I list all sorts of resources there, from books to tools to software, all the things that I use that make my CNC experience better and easier. And I hope you'll check it out. So again, it's CNCRoutertips.com/resources. I hope you've been enjoying this conversation we're having with Joe Cantrill of Joe's CNC. In episode 25, we're going to look at the Evolution machine from Joe, and we're also going to look at the Titan, which is a brand new product that's just coming out. So tune in and listen up. It should be out in a day or so. Now, if you'd like to have your question featured on the air, here's how. Need help? Ask me about your CNC router question on my podcast, the CNC Router Tips Podcast. I'll be glad to help or try and get you the help you need. I want this podcast to be a fun and personal experience for everyone and helpful. So let's keep it real and ask sensible questions. Please use common sense and show courtesy to everyone. That way everybody wins. Here are some guidelines to ensure that your question is qualified to be featured on the show. Please keep your questions under 1 minute in length. If it goes a little over that, that's fine, but don't ramble. If you have a website and URL, you're allowed to share it, but only once during the recording. Spammy or disrespectful or deeply private questions will not be considered for the podcast. If you need to ask more than one question, just make each question a separate voicemail. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the CNC Router Tips podcast. If you'd like to join our free mailing list, you can go to cncroutertips.com. And there's a link right there on the top of the page which tells you how to do that. Thank you so much and have a great day.